Hello and welcome to this tutorial on getting into orbit on Kerbal Space Program. We're going to start by selecting the Start Game option, and then we are going to start a new game. Select Start New and select Sandbox mode. Click on the vehicle assembly building. It's a big square one in the middle of the screen. And then select the little yellow icon to load your ship in the top of the screen. We're going to select the Kerbal X, and we're going to load it. This is a pre-built ship. Select the little green icon at the top of the screen. That will load the ship onto the launch pad. It's already been built. Already has everything we need to get into orbit. Now, the first thing you want to notice is this big blue circle kind of in the middle of the screen. This is your nav ball. This gives you all the information you need to fly the ship as far as what direction it's pointing in. In order to launch, we're going to have to pay attention to the left side of the nav ball. This is your throttle quadrant. And we're going to use the shift key to move the throttle to full. Notice there's a little arrow on the side here. When that moves all the way up to the top, the ship is at full power. You control it with the shift and the control key. Use shift to move the throttle up, control to move it down. After that, we're going to press the T button. The T button will bring up this little list of icons here. This is your stability assistance control. This helps you with steering the ship. It actually makes flying the ship a lot more easy. You notice that there are several icons that you can select. The one that we want is the one in the top left-hand corner, Stability Control. You'll also notice on the left-hand side of the screen, these are your stages. These are controlled by pushing the space bar. So every time I push space bar, it's going to activate each one of these icons in each one of these menus. And then you also control the view of the ship by using the mouse wheel and by holding the right mouse button to pan the screen. So when we're ready, we're going to press the space bar to fire the engines, and then we'll press it again to release the clamps, and you notice the ship starts to go up. Now, another thing you notice is on the top of the screen here, this is your altitude. This is how high you are in meters. And there's also this icon here. This shows you where you are in the atmosphere. There are different stages of the atmosphere. The thicker the atmosphere, the more atmospheric drag you're going to have on the rocket. Now, you notice on the left here, this is how much fuel we have. The first stage is out of fuel, so we're going to press the space bar to jettison the first set of boosters. We don't need those anymore. They're all out of gas. We're going to get rid of those. That's going to make the ship lighter. Now, as the ship continues to ascend, we're going to burn more fuel, get lighter, and move faster. And when each one of these stages runs out of gas, we use the space bar to drop that stage. Now, again, at the top of the screen, you notice that little icon. There's a little arrow, and that shows me where I am in the atmosphere. As that gets higher and higher, we want to start turning the ship. We're going to turn the ship with the WASD keys. And I want to press spacebar to get rid of that stage there. You really want to make sure you're getting rid of these stages as soon as they're out of fuel. And I'm going to use the D key to start turning the ship. I actually want to turn it to the east. I'm going to use my nav ball. It uses nautical headings. So east is 090, west is 180. South is 270, north is 000. And I want to turn it to the east because this is going to make getting into orbit much easier. The planet rotates to the east, and by turning the rocket east, I'm taking advantage of the planet's rotation to get more speed. My next set of boosters is out of gas, so I'm going to use spacebar again to get rid of those. And I'm actually picking up quite a bit of speed now, so I'm going to turn even more to the east to start picking up some horizontal velocity. Now you notice at the top, I'm actually getting to the point where I'm almost out of the atmosphere, so I actually want to be leaning into this quite a bit. I want to have the ship past a 45-degree angle and almost pointing towards the horizon at this point. Now, by pressing M, I enter the map view. At the bottom of the screen, if I click on this little caret, it'll bring my nav ball back. I can actually steer the ship from this view. You'll notice that it's drawn a arc. And this is my current trajectory. This is where my ship is going to end up. You'll notice that it's changing. It's because my engines are currently firing and I'm under acceleration. If I place the mouse over the arc, it'll actually give me my altitude. And that little icon in the middle of the arc is the highest point of the arc. That's my apogee. That's the highest point. When that gets to about 100,000 kilometers, I'm going to push X to turn my engine off. And now I'm on a parabolic arc. My ship is going to follow that arc. You'll notice that it does not go completely around the planet. It's because I'm not actually in orbit. Unless I fire my engines at the top of this arc, I will actually fall back down to the planet and crash. This is called a suborbital trajectory. I'm not actually in orbit yet. In order to get in orbit, I'm going to click on that little icon and click Add Maneuver. I'm going to select the little icon that looks like an airplane, and I'm going to drag it, and that will set up a maneuver node that will show me what my orbit's going to look like if I fire my engine for any given amount of time. I want to actually adjust this so that you'll actually notice there's two icons, the highest point of my orbit and the lowest point of my orbit. I'm going to move that so that they're both roughly about the same altitude, and that's going to put me on a pretty round orbit. Now, you'll notice now that I have done this and set this up, if I push M again and get out of map view, it's drawn a little blue icon on my nav ball. I'm going to separate the ship. I'm going to push spacebar again so that I can actually maneuver my ship to point towards that little M. I'm going to push shift to give myself just a little bit of power to get myself away from that spent stage. And I'm going to push the D key to steer my ship, and I'm going to align it with that little blue mark on my nav ball. Now that's going to align me up for my maneuver. When I get to this point in my orbit, I'm going to fire my engine right where that maneuver node is. If I click here, I can click on warp to next maneuver, and this will time accelerate me to where that is so I don't have to wait for my ship to float up there. And then on the bottom of the screen, you'll notice in this green lettering here, it tells me how far away from that maneuver node I am. And it also gives me a rough idea as to how long I'm probably going to have to burn my engines for once I get there. I like to burn my engines a little bit early just to be on the safe side. Push shift to fire up the engines, and then this will begin to accelerate me. You notice that there is also, this tells me how much gas I have. So I've got quite a bit of fuel in this stage, so I'm not going to have any problem getting into orbit. You'll notice that as I burn this stage, this blue line that shows me my current trajectory is going to continue to change until it matches the dashed line that I set up in my maneuver node. Now, getting into orbit is essentially a two-part process. The first part is you launch and you aim towards the east, and that will put you on a parabolic arc. And then at the top of the arc, you fire your engines in the direction of your travel, and that will give you enough speed that you will eventually reach orbit. Now, you notice on the right-hand side of my nav ball, there's kind of a yellow line that's slowly disappearing. That's how much energy I need to expend to get into orbit. It's almost gone, so I'm going to push X as soon as it's gone. That'll kill my engine, and I will be in orbit. You notice the camera shifts. That's the game's way of telling me I'm in orbit. I press X to kill my engine, and congratulations, I am now in orbit above Kerbin. I'm going to get rid of that maneuver node there, and there you have it. I'm in orbit now. Now to come back, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new maneuver node and select the little X at the back and drag that. And that shows what happens if I fire my engines in the opposite direction of my travel. And that's actually going to drop me right in the ocean. And that will draw a new little maneuver node icon on my nav ball. If I select the top right-hand corner icon, my autopilot will actually steer my ship towards that maneuver target for me automatically. So I don't actually even have to do that myself. And now that my ship is pointing in the right direction, all I have to do is fire my engines, and that will slow me down. And you notice the camera shifts as I drop out of orbit. I'm no longer in orbit anymore. And again, on the right side of the nav ball, I'm going to keep firing my engine until that little green line runs out. And that will put me on the right projected trajectory and drop me out of orbit right in that ocean, right where I was aiming. So we've reached the end of our burn. We push X to kill the engine, and I'm going to steer the ship towards the Earth and push spacebar to fire my second to last stage. That leaves me with just the capsule, and then I'm going to time accelerate. These little triangles up here speed up the speed of the simulation. I'm going to speed it up a little bit so I don't have to wait as long. If you ever have to travel any sort of distance on the game to get somewhere, time accelerating makes it a lot easier to do. You notice that if I do anything with these icons down here and turn my stability control off, the ship just kind of spins out of control. I mean, the stability control is really important in this game. I push T to turn it back on. You notice the ship stops spinning. So really having that stability control on really helps with steering your ship. And as far as coming back down is concerned, if on my nav ball, if I point it towards that green icon with the X in the middle of it, it means that my ship is traveling backwards. The blunt end of the ship is entering the atmosphere, and that will prevent me from burning up. And after a few moments, the ship will have finished entering the atmosphere. And once you survive the rigors of reentry, all that's left is to open the parachute. You do so by pressing the spacebar button. And all that you have left now is to wait for your Kerbals to splash down in the ocean and hope that the sharks don't get them. I certainly hope that you enjoyed this tutorial on getting into orbit in Kerbal Space Program, or at the very least found it useful. I really recommend learning to get into orbit with a pre-built ship. It's a lot less frustrating, and it really builds a foundation of knowledge as to what is needed when you start building your own ships. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. I really appreciate you watching. This was Comrade Kerman. Keep the pointy end facing space.